Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to our Holiday Dining with Diabetes program today. We have a couple viewers that are watching us from their desks, so everybody wave hi. But we just want to thank you very much for attending this week. We know it's been a little off because of the holiday on Wednesday, so I hope some of you had some nice relaxation time. Otherwise, how many people love healthy cooking? I mean, if you're here, right? You love healthy cooking. So we have another great opportunity for healthy cooking at Giant Eagle next week. It's on Wednesday, 6 to 7 p.m. at the Giant Eagle Market District in Upper Arlington. We have a fabulous chef and dietitian over there that's going to do some healthy holiday dining as well. I think they're doing some fun spins with Mediterranean diets. So definitely check it out if you get a chance. I sent it in the email. So you should have the information. Otherwise, it's on your plan for health. And if you can't register, don't worry about it. Just come. So we'll work out the registration later. But otherwise, I want to turn it over to our fabulous, infamous speaker, Jim Warner. And just in case you guys don't know that much about Jim Warner, he's the Program Director of Food and Nutrition in the Nutrition Services Department here at the Wexner Medical Center. His primary responsibilities include integrating food and nutrition education throughout the medical complex, as well as engaging with various community initiatives with food and nutrition programming. His responsibilities include retail food production, menu development, retail operations, renovations, and development of off-site retail business opportunities. He has forged a large number of relationships across the campus and over 20 years of service. So one of his strengths is to develop working relationships with disparate groups or operations to achieve wide-reaching goals related to the patient experience, customer satisfaction, and community action. James' skill set with project management, event planning, and his culinary nutrition background allow him to plan and execute initiatives that are innovative, educational, and meet the high standards of the Wexner Medical Center. Everybody, please give Jim a great round of applause.
Well, thanks, Lauren. I want to thank everybody for taking an hour out of their day to come to our Lunch and Learn. It's a gorgeous day outside, so I would expect every one of you at 1 o'clock to kind of leave for the day because it's a great day. If you stay, it's your own fault. It's a great day out today. So what we really wanted to gear up on today is give you some recipes that you could easily sub into your holiday meals and to try to cut down on your calories. Along with this, I wanted to let you know that we do have a diabetes-friendly program. It's every Tuesday over in the Bistro To Go area in Seasons Cafe from 2:30 to 3:30. It's no charge. Anybody's welcome to come in, whether you have active diabetes, whether you have a high A1C level. You're more than welcome to come. We offer 2 to 3 recipes every week, and we offer samples every week. So that's another class that we offer that has been sponsored by the medical staff and has been funded by the medical end of the medical center. So we're really thrilled to be doing that. We've been doing it since January, so it's just another option for you that's out there that is for staff and for patients as well. So today we're going to start out with a dish. We have 3 that we're going to work with. We've got a smashed sweet potatoes. That would work in place of your baked sweet potatoes with brown sugar and marshmallows and all the sticky sweet stuff that you normally put on your food. We have a pumpkin bread pudding, which is going to be the first recipe we're going to prepare. And we have an oven roasted cauliflower with garlic, olive oil, and lemon juice, which is great because this recipe can actually be used if you want to make mashed potatoes and use half of the mashed cauliflower. You want to puree that, mix it with half mashed potatoes. You're going to cut your calories in half right off the bat. And most people, by and large, because they have so much gravy and other stuff on their plate, won't even notice that you're using cauliflower for your mashed potatoes. So we call that kind of a stealth health kind of thing. For 3 years we fed our son, who's 16 going on 22. We fed him ground turkey for his tacos, and he didn't realize until like 3 years, I'm going to ask you guys, are you putting ground beef in my tacos? And like, well, not since you were 13 years old. So he was really kind of shocked he didn't know, but we cut down on the fat, and we drained it out really well, and it worked well for him. So if you have any questions, we want to keep this really casual. We're not going to hold the questions till the end. If you have any questions while we're doing any preparation, please feel free to ask. If you have any questions, about the, what it is that we're doing here, please feel free to ask them, and I'll repeat the task or repeat the action of what we're doing. One thing that we're doing today that's a little bit different from our other demos is we actually brought an oven to the class. This is an oven that used to be an Otis Spunkmeyer cookie oven that we're turning into an oven that we're going to bake the pumpkin bread. So we're going to bake the pumpkin bread first. We want that smell to really fill the room and to get you to start thinking about this recipe, because it is a great recipe and it works very, very well. Just to give you an idea of the bread that we used a baguette for the bread, and there's a couple ways to cut this, and a lot of people really kind of get confused a little bit on how they cut baguettes. And the way these grow is they're raised by yeast. So what happens is when you bake these rise up and then they contract a little bit. So when they contract, the hardest side of the bread is right here on the side. A lot of people will try to cut baguettes like this, but what happens when you try to cut it? It smashes. But if you cut it on the edge, where the edge is tougher, it's going to cut right through. So if you take this one takeaway home with you today, that this is the way to cut the bread, then I'll just leave right now and say thank you very much. We've had a great time. But that's really how you do it. Yeah, and what you want to do with your baguettes, if you have baguettes that are in the freezer, you could take them out of the freezer, bake them in the oven for about 10 minutes so they get crispy again, and then cut them on the edge. That's really the secret to cutting these. And if you have some of the baguette that's left, just leave it whole. If you want to cut this for onion soup, or you want to cut this and make some bruschettas out of this. If you want to make a really cheap bruschetta, just take some of the bread here, cut it, brown it in the oven with a little bit of olive oil, throw some salsa on there, a little bit of cheese and some cilantro, and you've got bruschetta. And nobody knows that you didn't go to all that effort to cut the tomatoes. Unless, of course, you tell them. But you're not going to do that, are you? No, okay. So we're going to put this bread back. So for the bread pudding, we have our moist ingredients that we're going to add first to our bowl. We've got our egg and our egg yolk, and we're going to stir this up. And the reason we're mixing our moist ingredients together first is we want a nice even distribution of the moist ingredients to go into the bread. We have milk, and we're using skim milk to cut down on the calories. We've got some pumpkin puree, and the pumpkin puree in this recipe comes from the large can of the pumpkin puree, not the 13.5 ounce can. I think it's the 28 ounce can. So when you buy the pumpkin puree for this, that's the can that you want to use. Somebody, yes?
So you use the white bread baguette?
Yes.
Do you use like a whole grain, or would it taste a whole lot different?
Not really. You could use a whole grain. That would be great. Or if you wanted to use, another kind of bread. But I like to use the baguette. Number one, if you look at the baguette, it has a lot of the holes in here, because as the yeast does its work with the bread, you get a lot of these nooks and crannies in here, and that allows the batter to go into the bread, which makes it cook a lot quicker. So I would stick with this kind of bread, but again, you could use the whole grain. Yes?
So you're using 1/4 of 20 ounce can?
Correct. So it'd be about 7 ounces. So we take these items, we've got them mixed. We're going to add, let's see here, we've got our Splenda with a little bit of fiber. And anybody over 50 knows why we need fiber, right? Okay, fiber is our friend. We have some pumpkin pie seasoning. We have some vanilla. And I like to use vanilla. Vanilla is one of those seasonings that you can use. Vanilla sort of tricks your taste buds into thinking that you're adding sweetness to your food. And that's why I like to use vanilla, because it kind of acts as sugar a little bit. And it's got some alcohol in it, so when you taste the vanilla, it opens up the sides of your taste buds. So we've got our pumpkin pie mix here, and we have our bread cubes that are measured out. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to add these. And we're going to let these sit for a few minutes. and soak up some of the moisture that's in here. And we're going to put this into a ramekin. And these are great. If you don't have any ramekins at home, I mean, once you buy these, you always find a use for these. When you're making bread pudding, you want to make sure that you spray these with Pam or some kind of a spray. Don't use olive oil spray for something that's supposed to be sweet, because olive oil and sugar really don't go together especially well. I mean, it'll work, but you don't want your bread pudding to taste like olive oil. So we've got this ready to go. We have an 8.5, or actually it's an 8 by 8 square pan that we're going to spray with regular cooking or vegetable oil spray. And we have our little ramekin that we're going to spray as well. Bless you. You could use honey in place to splend it, but then you're adding calories to it. You could use agave nectar would be one. You know, anything that's natural, agave nectar, honey, or maple syrup would be good, because those are natural sweeteners. Anytime you get into the high fructose corn syrup sweeteners, I try to steer away from them when at all possible. Pardon me? Yeah, you could use coconut sugar. Sugar is sugar. So you're going to get the same calories, but if you wanted to use that, you certainly could. I would probably go half the amount of what your volume is for your dried sugar, because your dried sugar has been dried and it's crystallized, so you're going to use probably half the amount of liquid sweetener. 8 packets is probably about a tablespoon, I'm going to guess. So here we have our pumpkin bread pudding, and it's ready to go. And we're going to go ahead and wipe off the edges before we bake it, because if you try to wipe them off after they bake it, you're just going to have a mess, and it's going to be bad. We're going to go ahead and cover this with a little bit of aluminum foil. I'm going to spray the aluminum foil with a little bit of veg spray, so that way it doesn't stick. Nothing's worse than having a gorgeous dessert that you're baking, and when you go to take off the aluminum, it pulls off half the top, okay? Everybody's done that before. It's bad, you feel bad. Even the dog feels bad. So we're going to throw that in there for about 20 minutes. And I haven't, but I think it would work pretty much the same, but it's not going to have the kind of tug on it that regular bread does, because what makes this bread work is the fact that it's got gluten, and gluten's what makes it stretchy and is what makes it good. But I would give it a try. I forgot to put the nuts on top, but I'll put the nuts on top when it comes out. I'm sorry? That'd be great, because you have a lot of flavor in there, and you've got the raisins, and it would all be good. So now that we've got the pumpkin bread pudding in here, and who wants to be my official timer? Who's got a watch? Anybody wear watches anymore? Okay, 15 minutes, let me know, and I'll check this, okay? So that's our bread pudding, real simple to make. And again, if you wanted to do all of your mise en place or do all of your preparation the night before, bake this the day of, you're more than welcome to do that. It actually reheats really well, too. So keep that in mind. Okay, the next recipe that we're going to work on is the oven roasted cauliflower, and this is with garlic, lemon, and lemon juice. And with this is, again, this could be a fuller, that if you wanted to use this in place of mashed potatoes or put this in with half the mashed potatoes, it's a great dish. The one thing that you probably wouldn't want to do would be, you probably wouldn't want to use the lemon juice, nor would you want to add the garlic. You wanted to stick with the traditional items that you would put in your mashed potatoes, which unfortunately is butter, and heavy cream and whatever else, but that's what makes it good. The average Thanksgiving meal contains how many calories? Anybody want to guess? Go on. Go. Less than 5? 4,500 calories. That's 2 days worth of calories in a 1 hour period, not including wine, not including beer watching football. It's a big day. I mean, and you wonder why you feel kind of hazy and queasy and not so good. It's not the wine. It's the fact that you've put all these calories into your body and your body doesn't know what to do with them. I mean, there's so many, it's hard to process them. And, you know, you wonder why the guys refer, you know, they go to the room to watch TV and they've got the clicker in one hand, they've got the other hand in their pants. That's because they've had so many calories, they don't know what to do. Their stomach's ready to burst. So they're holding everything in. Going to go ahead and take our chives. And if you don't have chives, you can use scallions. If you do use scallions, you want to make sure that when you use scallions, you want to wash them really, really well. And what I like to do with scallions is to take them and say this is the scallion or spring onion. And when they're in the pack, you know, you grab them by the root end and get a big tall pot of water and then bring them in the water. And then that way you take all of those impurities outside of the tube that is in the scallion, because scallions grow in really sandy, loamy kind of soil. And there's a lot of impurities in that soil. So what you want to do is get as many out of there as possible. Because when you hear about an outbreak of salmonella, I would say 4 to 5 times it's usually drawn back to spring onions or bean sprouts or alfalfa sprouts or something like that, because the water's not changed often enough or there's some kind of pathogen in the water. So you want to make sure they get cleaned as often as they possibly can. So the goal here with this particular recipe is to make sure that we take our cauliflower and we're going to brown the cauliflower. And the reason we're doing that is we want to make sure that with the cauliflower, there's natural sugar that's in the cauliflower. And with that natural sugar, what we're trying to do is we want to add enough heat to caramelize the sugar to give it a different flavor profile. So we're not adding any more sugar to it. We're just changing the chemical structure of the sugar to taste more pronounced. So we're going to add some extra virgin olive oil, and the chefs that set this up for me really broke my chops because they wrote EVOO, and they know how much I love Rachel Ray. So I want to thank them for that. Now, those of you, can you see in the mirror how when I immediately poured that oil in the pan, see how it moved across the pan quickly? That's telling you that it's hot enough, because you really want your oil to get fairly hot. If your oil starts to smoke immediately, start over again. Take your oil, put it into a container, not a plastic container, but like a glass container. Put the lid on, let it cool, and then throw it in the garbage. Don't throw it down the drain, because it'll eventually clog up the drains, and you'll see the bulldozers on your street in a few months. If it catches into flames immediately, cover it with the lid. Don't be curious to look in there to see what's happening in there, because as soon as you allow oxygen to go back in there, it's going to flame up altogether. Your curtains are going to go. It's going to be a big disaster. Your neighbors will talk about you for years to come. It's just not good. So I've got our cauliflower here. We're going to add this. And when you add this to here, to the heat, you want to hear that sizzle. Okay? And a lot of people, what they do is when they put something in a pan, they want to move it around right away. You don't do that. The reason people want to do that is because they don't want to sit here just looking at it, because they're afraid it's looking back at them like it's talking back. But you just want to let it sit there. And the reason for that is we've got a pan that's about 400 degrees. We just added cauliflower in there that's about 35 degrees. So we've dropped the temperature of that pan drastically. What we want is we want that heat to come back to the pan and start to caramelize the vegetables that we have in here. Also, if you notice on this pan, it's got a nice thick bottom. You want a thick bottom on these pans because it evenly distributes the heat throughout the bottom of the pan. I went camping once with my brother, and my brother is like, he's like blue collar Joe. They send him magazines about boats and guns and all sorts of stuff. But he brought this cookware to our camp, and it was like micro thin. We were making eggs for breakfast. They burned instantaneously. It was awful. So the reason you want that thick bottom is so you get a nice even distribution. And the reason you want to hear that sizzle right away, housekeeping. The reason you want to hear that sizzle right away is that tells you that the pan's hot enough. And if you can see in the mirror here, see how the cauliflower is starting to caramelize? And it took, what, 2 minutes for it to let it caramelize? So what this does is this cooks it quickly. And if I cook this in water, what's going to happen when you cook it in water? You're going to lose the water-soluble nutrients that are in this. So you want to make sure that you cook this, you cook it quickly, and you get a lot of flavor out of this, you get a lot of texture out of this, and it cooks very, very fast. Another recipe for this is if you want to make this into a puree. If you want to make this into a puree, you can get, it's called Laughing Cow cheese. Sorry, thank you. She gets some cauliflower for doing that. It's called Laughing Cow cheese. It's a super light Swiss cheese. You can make this into a puree, use that. We've used that a lot with our other diabetes cooking classes, and it tastes absolutely fantastic. So our cauliflower is starting to cook quickly, and you can see that the flatter sides of the cauliflower are getting browned, and that's what we want. That is exactly what we want. And because we've cut these all the same size, the cauliflower is all going to cook at the same time. What you don't want to do is you don't want to have a big honking floret like this and then have a little baby floret like this in there, because the small one's going to cook. By the time the big one gets done, the small one's going to be puree. So you want to have, especially when you're doing any pan frying, you want to have all the vegetables in there at the same size. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and season these with a little bit of salt and pepper. And I'm a big fan of mixing kosher salt and black pepper together at a 50-50, or actually 2 to 1 ratio. We use 2 parts kosher salt to 1 part restaurant grind or coarse ground black pepper. And the reason for that is number one, when you pick it up in your fingers, you know how much you've picked up. A lot of people, when they season an item, they'll get that blue tube of Morton salt and they'll go like this. How many times have you seen that? So you have no idea how much salt you're putting in. So what you want to do is, and again, this is very tactile, that you'll feel this in your fingers, you'll know how much is a teaspoon. You just take that, sprinkle that all around, and the pepper acts as a marker. The pepper tells you, by looking at it, that you've put twice as much salt in there than you did pepper. So that gives you a good indication of how much pepper you've had in there. Plus, when you're using the kosher salt, and you go back to using iodized salt, there's such a big difference in flavor. The kosher salt actually tastes like salt should. The iodized salt has iodine in it to prevent, there's a couple of diseases, it's called cretinism. And the last case of cretinism was somewhere near Akron, Ohio, like back in the 30s, where children were born and they were deformed because of some thyroid issues from their mothers. I don't see any cretins in here today. So I think that obviously the move from iodized salt to kosher salt, are you saying you're a cretin? Okay.
Sea salt okay too?
Sea salt's great, yeah.
I go back and forth between kosher.
Yeah, between kosher and sea salt, I think they're both good. Again, because they aren't processed. They do have an agent in there to prevent caking, and that's only to keep it the kernels from sticking together. So this, to me, this cauliflower is done. And if I look at this here, I'm going to go ahead and turn off the burner. And I'm going to go ahead and add the remainder of my ingredients to this. I'm going to add a little bit of garlic. And I didn't add the garlic in right away. Anybody know why I didn't add the garlic right away? It would burn. It would get bitter, and it would burn really, really quickly. So we're adding the garlic to this now. And you can probably smell that coming out your way. And we're going to add the lemon juice. And again, the pan is off, okay? We're no longer cooking. We're just using the residual heat in the pan. And because we have a thick bottom on the pan, we've got a lot of residual heat in this. Okay, we're going to add our chives. Do not use freeze-dried chives. Do not use dried chives. Dried chives are like the grass clippings from underneath your lawn boy, okay? And the grass clippings probably taste better than the dried chives because they're just nasty. Okay, so here we have this ready to go. We're going to go ahead and put this on our platter. Okay, what I'm going to do with this platter, I'm going to put half of the potatoes on here, half of the sweet potatoes, and then half of the cauliflower on here. But if you look at this, I mean, it looks great, it smells great, and then we're going to top this with Parmesan cheese. And we're using Parmesan Reggiano cheese. Parmesan Reggiano cheese, again, is a very, it's aged for quite a long time, and it has a lot of flavor. Don't use the Parmesan cheese in that green tube because it's like whey, and it's like byproduct of cheese. The government calls it cheese because the government can do that. Don't buy that. Buy this good cheese, and you have to use a whole lot less. You know, we tell people that whenever they're cooking, you know, if you want to use a cheese, use a good feta cheese, use a good Swiss cheese, use a good Parmesan Reggiano cheese, because you're going to use less and get more flavor. Never, ever cook with American cheese unless you're making a toasted cheese sandwich. Okay? Even use cheddar cheese for your macaroni and cheese. Don't use American. Just nasty. Why do people do that? I don't understand. I thought I knew people. Pardon me? It is, and when you look back at you know how we you know what we did with our children from the 50s and 60s on, you know when everybody came back from World War II, we started processing food in cans. We started processing food, you know, frozen foods only because we had to feed this huge population that was suddenly moving out to the suburbs, and we weren't getting food from the farmers because we were moving to the cities. So there are a lot of reasons why we eat the way we do today, and a lot of it is due to the way the population migrated post-World War II. Not that it's good, not that it's good. It's actually very bad the way we eat today, because a lot of us don't eat from farm right to the table, and that's really unfortunate, because if you go to any one of our stores here, we have a plethora of fresh fruits and vegetables that are available to us year-round, and a lot of people choose not to do that. One thing that I would recommend that you do, how are we doing for time? Okay. Take a peek. Okay, it's coming along. You know, the one thing that I try to tell people is most Americans in their adult life eat the same 200 foods their entire life. That's pretty boring. And when you think about it, and when you go into any grocery store, I was in Whole Foods last week doing an event for the James Cancer Hospital, and I counted a little over 180 items just in the produce wall. They were all different in just one small section of the store. So what I invite you to do is every time you go to the grocery store, try a produce item that you've never tried before. There are recipes out there. Go to foodtv.com, epicurious.com. Cooking Light. There's just so many resources out there for you to use food, and don't be afraid of food. I mean, if you don't have the exact ingredients that you need, sub it. One thing that we did this summer is we had a program over here called Producing Healthy Moms or Growing Healthy Moms. We went to the food pantries every Monday and picked up foods or plant-based items just for the expectant moms. And I had no idea what I was going to get every Monday. So then we had the class on Tuesday, and we would look at what we had, and we would make these fantastic meals out of what was given to us from the Mid-Ohio Food Bank just because we took a little bit of a chance. You know, we took tomatoes, made a tomato soup, and then we took the tomato soup, or we took a tomato sauce, made a tomato soup. We put some cumin in it, sprinkled some avocados on top with some lime juice and some cilantro. It was a tomato soup, and it tasted fantastic. And it's that little bit of thinking ahead. And a lot of the clients that we saw over there, either they don't have a range, or if they do have a range in their kitchen, their gas has been turned off, so we have to use a small little pot like a little burner like this, and we don't use any sort of food processors or blenders. So we were creating some really cool meals out of food that they had. Next class that we have, I bring a pantry list for you of things that you should keep in your house all the time, so no matter what you have, you can always make a meal that's healthy for you. Every time you go out to eat, number one, you're spending money you probably don't need to spend. Number two, you're probably eating something that you really don't need to have in your body. You know, a couple things that you can do to cut down on sugar is, and you'll see this when we do this with the sweet potatoes, is we're going to use some unsweetened applesauce, and we're going to use bananas as a sweetener in the sweet potatoes, which is really kind of unusual. Add low glycemic vegetables to your stuffing, like onion, celery, and pretzels. Swap out pretzels for nuts. And then if you want a portion control, if you want to make stuffing for your holiday, just take a muffin tin, put your stuffing in the muffin tin, and that's your portion. Because a lot of times on Thanksgiving or Christmas or these holidays, you have no idea how much is on your plate. You just keep on piling it on, and most of the time you feel full after 20 minutes. So when you do eat a Thanksgiving meal, eat slowly, because after 20 minutes you'll know you're full. A lot of people sit there and think, oh my God, I've got to eat this now. I've seen people eat with two hands like this. It's just like horrible. So really, I would suggest not to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and check on our pumpkin bread pudding. Okay. So right now this is pretty moist, and it's starting to cook. And what you want to do is when you see if this is finished, you want to put a knife in here, and when the knife is coming up dry, then you know the bread pudding's about done. So what I want to do now is I want to get this crisp on top so it has some nice texture to it and it starts to caramelize a little bit. And I would like to thank the Otis Spunkmeyer Company for leaving this oven here for us today. We've been using this for a couple of years now, and it's actually great to use. So with our smashed sweet potatoes, there's two ways you can go about doing this. One is that we took some sweet potatoes and we browned these in the oven with a little bit of olive oil, and we baked them for about 40 minutes. Then we put them into a Ziploc bag to continue to steam. The reason we did that is because once you start to brown them, you're losing some of the moisture. So what we did by putting them in the bag, we allowed the moisture that was in the sweet potatoes to draw back into the sweet potatoes. So that you could use these as a substitute if you wanted to, and you could mash these. I'm a big fan of using the whole sweet potato as opposed to kind of the potatoes up. So we've got the largest pan I could find. And we have our sweet potatoes. And with these, we just put these in aluminum foil. And you can bake them naked, but if you do that, they end up drying out. So you really want to keep these covered the best you can. And what's also good about covering these is a lot of the nutrients are located outside on the skin of the sweet potato. So if you're so inclined to eat the skin, it's all good for you. I wouldn't deep fry it to make it better, but that really would make it better. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to cut our sweet potato in half. And if you let these cool overnight, the skin comes off a whole lot easier, because what you're doing is the difference in temperature between the walk-in that you have and the heat in the center actually pushes the skin apart from the sweet potato. But if you look at that, I mean, you can't help but think that's not nutritious. I mean, it looks great. It's easy to use. Yes? Always put it in the fridge. Because if you stick it in the fridge, what will happen is again, you're going to get those two different temperature variations, and the skin's going to come off a lot easier for you. So that's one trick that you can do. But with these here, because we set these and we let them sit in the bag, the sweet potato comes right off, and all we have left is the skin. So we have nothing to waste here, which is great. And for those of us who are kind of time strapped, this is it's good to know. For about 40 minutes, yeah. I bake these for about maybe 45 minutes. It depends on the size of the sweet potato. But between 40 and 45 minutes seems to be the right time for these. And when you choose your sweet potatoes, you're going to want to make sure that you pick them that they don't have a lot of indentations, and they don't have a lot of imperfections on the sweet potato. Because you can see here, these have very smooth skin. They don't have a lot of indentations, because a lot of times when you pick a sweet potato that has a lot of like nooks and crannies in there, sometimes you can get pathogens or things that were in the soil that you can't get washed out. And you don't want to put those back into your sweet potatoes because obviously it's not good for you. So we've got our sweet taters. We've got these skinned here. I'm going to go ahead and put them in a pan. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and pre-chop these because I was supposed to get a potato masher last night and I didn't get it, and so I'm going to hand chop these real quick and then put these into the pan. And again, once these are ready to go, we're going to take out any of the eyes that are still left in the sweet potato. Get rid of that. We're just going to kind of chop these up, and it really doesn't matter how you chop them because what you're trying to do is puree them. Okay, so once you've got them on here, lift up your entire cutting board and just put this into the pan. And then we have some heat-proof spatulas. We're going to start to mash these down a little bit. And you don't want to mash these too much. You want to actually kind of leave them kind of whole. And the reason for that is we want these to look home style. If you wanted them completely mashed, you could buy them in a grocery store. But if you leave some chunks in them, it looks like you made them. That's why we call it home style. And that way, if you really mess up, you could call it anything home style. If you mess something up, always call it home style, okay? Keep that in mind. Okay, so we have a tablespoon of butter. We're going to add to this. We have some brown sugar. We're going to add, we have some unsweetened applesauce. We're going to add to this, and you can hear that steaming pretty well. And the reason I added my spices in here first is I want the spices to come alive. If you add any kind of a dried spice to a liquid, what's going to happen is the liquid is going to encapsulate that spice, and it's not going to allow it to bring out the full flavor of that. So anytime you're making spaghetti sauce or something that has a dried spice, you want to make sure that you put it in there early in the hot heat with oil specifically to release some of the flavors. And think of it this way, spices go first, fresh herbs always go last, because you want the fresh herbs to season the food you're eating at the very last minute, because there's a lot of oil in the fresh herbs, and you want them to release the oils at the last minute, where the dried spices, who knows how long they've been dried, you want to add them to hot oil to release some of the flavors that are in there. So we're going to take our banana. If you are kind of pushed for time, bananas come in this handy carrying case, so you can just... And this is great Gestalt therapy. If you have it in for somebody, you could write their name with a Sharpie on here. Okay, let's see here. Right there, so you write their name on the Sharpie, and then just kind of pat them around a little bit, and just open up the banana. And then we have some mashed banana we're going to put right inside here. And the banana adds some unusual flavor and some sweetness to this that you wouldn't ordinarily expect in a recipe like this. And then we have some syrup we're going to add to this. And again, if you wanted to use the agave nectar, if you wanted to use honey for this, you could add this as well. If you wanted to make this appear even sweeter, you could add some of the sugar-free syrup would work in this as well. So we've got this, and we're moving this around. If you can see here in the mirror, we're kind of moving this around a little bit. And what I would do with this, just because I like dried fruit, is you could add some dried cranberries to this. You could add some dried raisins to this. I especially like apricots would be great. I especially love white raisins, because to me, white raisins are always plump. White raisins always taste great in this dish. And they plump up even more because you've added some moisture to this. And this takes very little time to cook. And again, the thing that's great about this is you don't have to worry about cooking this the day of, because everything's already done for you. The banana, all you do is smash it. The sweet potatoes, you skin them, you throw them in a pot, you smash them up, you put them on a plate, and hope somebody will help you clean up later. Really, that's the hardest part about, at least in my house, about Thanksgiving. Now, if you wanted to put a little bit of coconut in here, now again, there's some saturated fat with coconut, but coconut does really well. If you're a little more adventurous, if you want to use Thai curry paste with this, it would really, to me, it would blow them up. It would just like, they'd be fantastic because the Thai curry paste has ginger, garlic, lemongrass, has a lot of exotic Middle Eastern flavors to there that makes it taste really, really good. So we're going to just add this back to our fire and get it good and hot. And again, you could substitute the cut ones if you wanted to use these as well, but these have some, again, are brown, but you could use those. But again, I like using the mashed ones. And it's funny, when you do this, people will say, what's different about these? You don't have to tell them. Oh, it's my own secret recipe. And that's the great thing about, utilizing these types of foods is we have a lot of high flavor in these foods without adding a lot of fat, without adding a lot of oil. And what we've done is we've added a lot of aromatics to the foods, which makes them taste better. Some of the stuff might be a little more expensive, but if you have a high A1C level or diabetic, you need to control it. And this is a way to help your family accept this as well, because a lot of times people that have different disease states, their families don't buy into the changes that they have to make. And so what we see is someone who might have had a cardiac issue or someone's just recently diagnosed with cancer, you have to change the way you eat. And the whole family has to change the way they eat because of their loved one. And a lot of people aren't really game to do that. So if you can produce foods that mimic what they've always had, but just a little bit off, they'll never notice, and the whole family eats well, and you're not feeling like you're out there alone by yourself. Yes? Absolutely. Butternut squash would be great as a sub for this. But again, you'd want to cook those and roast them. Just regular, I always keep unsalted butter in my house. I never use salted butter. It's Giant Eagle butter. I think it's from Pittsburgh, really. So here's our mashed sweet taters right there, and they look yummy. And I think I have that little thing of pecans right here. And if you really want to go all out, go to Whole Foods, get some of the bourbon glazed pecans, which I think are fantastic, okay? And you can sprinkle these on top. And again, everything in moderation. This is not a plate for two, okay? This is for about really probably 6 or 8 people because you have everything else to go with it, whether it's the stuffing, the turkey, whatever else that you're making with this. So this is one suggestion that we have here. Can everybody see this in the mirror? Okay. Now we're going to come in here, we're going to check the pumpkin bread pudding. And it's looking good. I need to let that brown for a little bit. What I would suggest is, and I've done this before, and somebody saw me doing it. It was at an event, and they called it cheating. I didn't think it was cheating. It was actually kind of stacking the deck more in my favor. There's these little torches that you can buy for about $35, or you can use your husband's Bernzomatic torch and brown the top of something really quickly. I've done that for parties. I always take it with me. Because you never know if something doesn't brown up quickly enough and dinner's at 7 and it ain't brown, you're going to brown it any way you can. So I have this little torch that I keep with me, and actually one of the clients came back and said, that's cheating. I said, no, it's not. You want dinner at 7? You better let me do this. So there's our bread pudding, and you can see just by looking at it. And what we're going to do is we're going to separate this with a sharp knife. And you can tell that there's no liquid in the pan. If we had liquid in the pan, it would be coming out right now and it wouldn't be done. And you can also tell, based on the moisture of this, that it's absorbed all the liquid in the pan. If you wanted to add some sugar-free syrup to this or some agave nectar or something like that, a natural sweetener, that is great. If you wanted to add if you could get some, low-fat pumpkin ice cream for this. Another topping for this that I wouldn't discount would be fat-free Greek yogurt vanilla flavor. That would be awesome with this. Or another sauce that you can make pretty much out of nothing. If you want to make an anglaise sauce, an anglaise sauce is a very classical French sauce. Okay, if you want to make an anglaise sauce to impress your friends, take some French vanilla ice cream, let it melt, pour it on the plate, and call it an anglaise sauce. They will never know. It works every time because it's the right color, it's the right consistency. It's all about selling the sizzle, isn't it? So any questions on the food that we've had here today? I mean, these are really, I think, pretty straightforward and pretty simple recipes. Really the most difficult recipe was to cut up the bread for the pumpkin bread pudding, and I've had this a few times. It's got a great pumpkin flavor to it. The cauliflower, you can buy the cauliflower in bags, but I'm kind of opposed to that because you don't know how long it's been since it's been cut. Number two, you're paying somebody else to do the work that you should probably be able to do. With the sweet potatoes, again, just pick the sweet potatoes or yams that have the fewest imperfections on the outside, and just let it go. I mean, we cooked 3 items in about 45, well, actually less than 45 minutes because Lauren talked for 20 minutes. So, yeah. So, yeah. There's about half of a loaf. Yeah, because this loaf here is, this is probably an 18 inches long, so probably about 9 inches of this loaf here would do it. I wouldn't use sourdough bread because sourdough has a flavor that not everybody really likes or appreciates, so I would go with the French bread. But if you do want to use the multigrain bread, I think that would be perfectly acceptable. The thing that you want to look for is you want to look for these big bubbles that the yeast left, because that's how all the batter gets inside there, and that's why it cooks. If you use Wonder Bread in here, it's going to be like a sponge. It's going to be nasty, okay? Because Wonder Bread has no real texture to it, okay? Because they didn't stretch the gluten at all. All they did with Wonder Bread is they just put enough gluten in there or flour in there to stretch it enough so the bread has some form and some shape. But they didn't stretch it out because that's what makes Italian bread and that's what makes baguettes so good is they've taken the gluten strands and they've pushed them and they've turned them and they've made them work. It's like the muscles on your arms. You know, gluten-free bread's like the tenderloin on your back because you don't use that muscle. But, you know, high gluten bread is like these guns right here. So don't laugh, Kim. So any questions about what you've seen today? Yes, sir. Yeah, usually the ramekins for this recipe are about like the 6-inch ramekins, and I put it in here because I didn't have the 6-inch ramekins. Or you could make this same recipe actually makes about 18 ramekins that are about the 4-ounce size because I made the same recipe for an event and did about 18 ramekins, and that ramekin size is this size here, and it says made in China. So I really don't know what size this is here. It's probably about a 3-ounce, but you want to put the bread pudding in here right about to the top because you want to allow it to pop up a little bit. And when it pops up, as it rises, it's going to bake around the sides as well, which gives you more crusty and it gives you a better flavor as well. So, any questions? You guys have been a lovely audience.
Yep.
And,
Everybody, please give Jim a round of applause. And we also want to thank you, Jim, for being our participant and being our cooking demo expertise today. So thank you from
Thank
Buckeye
you.
Wellness and the Office of the Chief
I
Wellness
appreciate it.
Officer. Everybody, I want to turn your attention to your packet of papers, and I do call it a packet. So we have not only the recipes that Jim made for us today, but we also have a few things. Our evaluation, of course, so important. So please hand it either to Cindy or leave it on your chair. And Cindy, give away for us. Thank you. So everybody either hand it to Cindy or leave it on your chair. As you know, the evaluations are really important. We tried to use the information to craft our future programs. So please fill it out. We do hear your feedback. Also, we have Outpatient nutrition services offers free nutrition counseling. So I know there's some papers in there that discuss what programs are available to you, especially as health plan members. I think you get 3 free counseling appointments. Yeah, so great resource for you if you're ever interested in improving your diet. There's also, I think, the Learn program in there if you're looking for a weight management opportunity, or you know other people that are looking for that opportunity. Also take a look at that. And then we have some Weight Watchers forms too. So Lori out here is at the Weight Watchers table and she'll be happy to talk to you about what is available to you as an OSU employee if you want to engage in a meeting or online meetings or bring a meeting to your department. So thank you, everybody.
And